When you have a plant with a problem, it's not always easy to know exactly what's going on, even if you have a plant YouTube channel. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Cece with One Green Pea, and today I'm going to take you along with me as I take a deep dive into this Monstera adansonii to see, can this plant be saved? As you can see, a lot of the leaves on my Monstera are turning yellow, and some of them that aren't completely yellow are just have a paltry color. Truth be told, I haven't really been happy with the health of this plant since I bought it, and I've had it probably a year and a half. So I'm going to take it apart and see what's going on. This plant is clearly telling me that something is off. It shouldn't have yellow leaves. That's not normal. That's the plant's signal to me. The problem is that can be a signal for a number of things. Yellow leaves on a Monstera can point to overwatering or underwatering. They could also mean that the plant is getting too much direct light. I also have some concerns that this plant might need to be repotted, that it might be root bound. I've got quite a root coming out the bottom there. So I'm going to take it apart. Another issue that I have with this plant is that I put it on this trellis last fall because it was just viney and it wasn't looking great, and I thought maybe it needed some guidance and then the leaves would grow bigger. Well, that hasn't happened, and I didn't do a very good DIY on this trellis, so I'm going to take it apart and find another solution. Now, if I can't get it apart, well, then if I can't unwind these, then I may have to just cut and do a lot of propagating and kind of start over. So let's dig in and see. The first thing that I'm going to do is try to unwind this from the trellis, and I think it's going to be kind of some tricky work. I want to cause as little damage as possible and as little trauma as possible because clearly this plant is not happy. So that's going to take some time. So I'm going to speed up the next part of this video so you don't have to watch the whole thing. Okay, well, that was quite an effort. Like how frustrating it is to try to untangle necklaces. It was that kind of challenge, but I did it, and I think I only lost 1 or 2 leaves, so that's good. So before I unpot this plant, I want to check on the soil level and see, is it wet at the bottom? Is the drainage not working? Or is it excessively dry? So let me grab my soil meter. You're going to hear a lot of different things about using a soil moisture meter, whether it's good or not good. I like to use them, and I have a pretty good one. It seems to be pretty accurate, and I can link it down in the caption below. So I'm just going to put it into the soil and see what it says. Okay, so it's reading dry. That's a good sign to me, and I've got it all the way down. So the root level at the very bottom is dry. So I can pull it up and see if it changes a little. Dry plus, so that means it's even drier the higher we go, which makes sense. And that makes me happy, actually, because that means that I'm not overwatering this plant. So I'm going to take it apart. And again, one of my thoughts is maybe it's extremely root bound. So let's check that out. I tip this guy out of the pot, and the more root bound he is, the more challenging this is going to be. So I brought a tool, my fork. I like to use kitchen tools with my plants. I find that they serve the purpose quite well, and then I can just use something I already have instead of just buying something new. So being really careful and just going along the outer edges of the pot. I don't know what the roots are going to look like. This is usually easier to do if the plant is dry. So if you're repotting, here's a good tip. Do it when the plant is dry. The root ball will hold together a little bit better. So yeah, see what we've got going on. And making a mess is just par for the course. It just happens. So there is a lot of roots down here, kind of tangled. So there are a lot of roots. Oh yeah, look around. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, super root bound. If you can see, these guys are wrapped heavily in around itself. So this extra root mass here isn't serving the plant at all. And so I'm actually gonna trim that off. We don't need that. In fact, it probably will just break off. It's just hung on by this little strand. So I'm gonna try to loosen this root mass up without doing too much damage. I'm gonna then freshen the soil, and I'm gonna take some cuttings. So I'm gonna do all those things. So actually it makes me really happy that I don't have root rot going on. Really, this is just a case of this plant saying, I don't have enough soil and nutrients any longer for the roots that it has developed. So I've just massaged them gently apart. Now I'm gonna put fresh soil in this pot and take some cuttings as well. So a big tangled mass of roots. And then at the top, this matted section of roots that you can see are so tightly wound. They're actually not serving this plant at all. And clearly this plant has no problem developing roots. So I'm gonna do something controversial. I'm going to remove this section of root because I don't think it's doing any good for the plant. And I want to freshen things up. So some people say never touch the roots. Clearly this guy's roots were the problem. It's just so matted so much. Like there's barely any soil in there, actual soil. This is all root. And then I'm going to take some cuttings. Now you might wonder, so why am I not just uppotting this plant? Because there's just not enough foliage. I just think that would look weird. So instead of having a long stringy plant, I want a fuller plant. So I'm going to put this back in the pot and then I'm going to take some cuttings. I have some fresh soil here, so I'm going to start off with that at the bottom. Gonna leave a lot of room so that these roots can reach all the way to the bottom and they don't tangle up again like they were before. So I will set this plant in here and then I'm gonna fill around with the remaining soil. My next step is to take some cuttings. I'm going to remove the yellow leaves because they're not going to come back, and then cut them back, and then when the new stems, the cuttings root, I'm going to put them back in the pot so that ultimately I get a fuller, healthier plant out of it. I'm going to be pretty aggressive with my cutting. So I will take a vine and make sure that I have nodes on the vine. I will cut just above a node because I don't want to leave a naked stem. And then just below the node on this cutting, remove any bottom leaves. And then this is just going to go in water. So I'm just going to continue doing that all around the plant. Only time will tell if I was successful in rescuing this plant, but I have high hopes. It obviously has a really strong root system, and what I've done is cut the plant back to the point that there's less demand on those roots. So they're going to recover from the trauma of being pulled out and massaged apart. And in addition, I have this entire jar full of vines that I can propagate. And in the meantime, while I'm waiting for roots, I think it's a really pretty spring display that I will put on my table. Thank you so much for coming along on this journey of trying to save my Monstera adansonii. Remember, plant problems are not always easily solvable. We don't always know exactly what's going on. Sometimes we have to get our hands dirty. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. As always, my plant friends, let's keep growing together a greener world.